Well, I just want to say good morning and thank you for coming. I appreciate it. My name is Steve Wiard. I know some of you and some of you I do not know, perhaps. In the announcements, it mentioned that I was the pastor at El Poblito United Methodist Church for 21 years. I moved to Taos in 1997. I've been here close to 25 years now. One correction, they did mention in the announcements, I was the founder of Share Table. I was not the founder of Share Table. I was the director of Share Table for 20 years. But Share Table began in 1994, about 3 years before I arrived. I'm the predecessor of others. And it continues to be an important ministry. Certainly Joanne and others know that. We distribute in our Prado on the second and fourth Wednesday. And then we do the same in Talpa, at the Talpa Community Center in the afternoon. So it reaches both ends of town as well, and that's important. And my blessings and prayers for Jenna today, your pastor, as she is in other places. Preachers need a break from time to time, and we're glad that she is other places with responsibilities and some time of rest as well. She and you have invited me back in 2 weeks. Maybe that's risky when you haven't heard the guy preach. I don't know. But 2 weeks on the 15th, I'm coming back, and I'm thinking of doing a biblical drama on that day instead of traditional sermon. I think it's kind of good to be creative and bring the message in different ways. So on the 15th of May, I think I will be in costume and in character. And you'll have a surprise visitor that day. That's the plan. But today I want to ask you to think about this day. You know what today is, right? It's Mayday. It's the 1st of May. And when Jenna or Amy Jo, when people called me, said, Steve, can you preach the 1st of May? I said, 1st of May, I'm ready. It's Mayday. And I don't know about you. I want you to think back to your childhood memories. When you were a young girl or a young boy. I grew up in the Midwest. I was born in Kansas City, but lived in eastern Kansas, western Missouri. And in the Midwest, we have porches. Here we have portal. Well, you had a porch in Kansas. And May Day was a day when you could, get some flowers, right? Maybe you could get those flowers in your own garden, or maybe you'd get them in somebody else's garden. I don't know. But you'd get some flowers and you'd run up to somebody's door, knock on the door, ring the bell, and just take off and surprise them. And they would come to the door and there would be flowers. That's part of May Day. That's a surprise. It brings joy to somebody. The church needs to bring joy to people. The church needs to find ways to surprise people. Jesus was many things, but I believe he was a surprise to Pontius Pilate and a lot of other people. And still needs to be. And that's a part of May Day. It's spring. And even though the smoke, I've lived here, like I said, 25 years. When I came to church this morning and I saw the smoke, I couldn't really see the mountain. I knew it was there. And that's part of the message of Easter also. People say, can you see God? Well, I don't know that you see God in some ways, but I know God's there. I know that mountain's there. And when pilots are flying and they can't see it, they then fly with their instruments because they know the mountain's there. So even in the midst of the smoke, it's still the 1st of May already. 1/3 of the year is gone. And we celebrate with joy and flowers and giving. It's also recognized by many countries around the world as International Workers' Day, the 1st of May. Now, the United States doesn't celebrate it so much, but many countries in the world today is International Workers' Day. And in the late 1800s, there were a lot of workers in this country on strike. And in Chicago, they had a problem with some of the strikers and the police. There was violence and people were killed at the Haymarket riot. Striking to say, we need to get rid of a 12-hour workday. What about a 10 or maybe an 8-hour workday and not working children 8, 9 hours a day? But President Cleveland and others decided in the government, we're not sure we want to associate ourselves with some of these international workers and strikers who call themselves socialists. And also some of them say they are communists. So the government kind of decided, instead of May 1, let's just move this to the first Monday in September and call it Labor Day. We celebrate Labor Day rather than International Workers' Day. And the other reality of May Day is that you may recall for aviators and those who are on ships, it is an internationally recognized call of distress, right? Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Means you're in trouble. And that word comes from the French. I didn't really know French. I took some Spanish, Latin, and a little German, but there's a word in the French language called Mayday, and it means help me. Help me. And in the 20s, it was a group of radio broadcasters said, let's accept this word Mayday as a word meaning help me, Mayday. That's what it means. So Mayday has a lot of meanings to me. And if you're wondering why some of this history, well, part of it maybe is because I taught public high school for 18 years when I lived in Eastern Kansas. 11 to 12 graders. That's why my hair's gray. But I enjoyed teaching history. And I believe that the church is called to be involved with issues of social justice. The scripture that Dennis read this morning from one of the early prophets, Amos. Amos was willing to stand up to the powers that be in his day. He said, hate what is evil, love what is good, establish justice. If that means workers' rights or living wage, that's justice. Jesus was about justice and hope. And we need to remember that as we move forward in the church. The church is a voice for many who do not have a voice. The church needs to say things that, I don't expect the hardware store, the grocery store to say some things, but I do expect the church to say some things if we're going to follow in the footsteps of Jesus Christ and the prophets. They didn't please everybody, but they tried to speak truth to power. And we're called to do that. Because a new day is broken. Morning has broken. That's a beautiful, beautiful piece. I know Miss Cat Stevens, now it's useful. We all have a little change in our lives. And someone asked me, I know it was in the last couple of weeks. I remember it was a post office. My wife and I live in Ranchos, behind old Martinez Hall, but it might have been at the post office. Someone came up to me and they said, hi, Steve. They said, I hear you're doing an Easter sunrise service. And we had Jenna was there and Sherry Lyon. We had 100 people out there on the west side of the bridge Easter morning at 7 a.m. And that sun came up. It was wonderful. What a place to celebrate. It was a community ecumenical event. And someone came up to me, though, earlier that week, and they said, Steve, can you tell me what is Easter really about? 25 words or less. You try answering that. What is Easter about? Well, it's about a lot. It's about hope. The church needs hope. And if the church knows there is hope in Christ, we need to find ways to share that hope. Because I'm telling you, there are people looking for hope. There are people looking for hope. And sometimes they look to you for hope. They may know you have a church connection. May not be their church connection, but if you're in a church, that may mean that there's some hope. That's what spring is about. That's also what Mayday is about. To bring joy in the morning. Harper Lee wrote it, To Kill the Mockingbird. Joy cometh in the morning. We in the Christian faith need to be able to share that joy with people. Easter is also about new beginnings. New beginnings. And remember, we're just 2 weeks out from Easter. Just 14 days ago, we had that Easter sunrise, and you had an Easter celebration here. I have to think and believe that those early disciples of Jesus were a little bewildered and befuddled and in a conundrum in those days and weeks after the resurrection. There was great concern. He was arrested. He was crucified. And then some folks are saying, no, he's not. He's risen. I've seen him. Some said, well, I didn't see him, so I don't believe it. You know, you could say, well, it was not a bad sermon. Well, I didn't hear it. I don't know if it was any good or not. I wasn't there. You were. See, people say, I don't know. Was Jesus, is he really alive? New beginnings. And the end is our beginning. Jesus is trying to say death is not the end. There are new beginnings with Christ, with God. And the scripture reminds us too that, and Jesus reminds us that sometimes we find ourselves in a bad place, in a difficult place. And it's good to give people hope at that time, but sometimes we can't make the bad stuff go away. I visited people in my ministry, in the hospital, in jail. I can't get them out of jail. I can't make the illness go away, but I can be with them because I believe Christ is with us. I don't feel like he ever promised and said, Steve, you're going to have a wonderful life. Everything will be just fine. There'll be no broken glass in your life. No, it's not like that. I've had a few Mayday calls in my life in 73 years, let me tell you. Have you had a few? Yeah, not just me. I've had some endings. I've had some endings that were tough, that were difficult for me. But I've also had new beginnings that were wonderful, that I didn't foresee. So we have to remember the new beginnings as well. And we can't make it all go away, but we can be with people and say, you know, even if you're in a bad place, I'm going to be here with you. I'm going to be here with you. 21 months ago, I had open heart surgery. Talk about catching me by surprise. People love me. They didn't make the blockage go away, but they were there with me when the surgery happened. They were there with me. You just need to find ways to be with people when they need you there. That's part of what Jesus Christ is saying to us. And the very last verse of the Gospel of Matthew, I don't have the Bible memorized, but I remember a few verses. Perhaps it's similar to you. The last verse of Matthew, Jesus says to his followers, lo, I will be with you always, even to the end of the age. It's like he's saying to me, Steve, I'll be with you always. I won't make all the bad stuff go away, but when you're in the midst of it, I'm going to be there with you. That's a blessed assurance that we have. And Easter is about sharing that good news. It's about what I call a ripple effect of theology. Remember when the last time you threw a stone into a pond or a river and you saw that ripple? It's a ripple effect. That stone drops and you can just see the ripples. The church needs to be like that. That when you and I leave here this morning, that ripple effect continues. In terms of sharing, hoping, caring. In 1994, when a few folks gathered at El Poblito and decided to start a food program, they said, what are we going to call it? Let's call it Shared Table. It's a good fit. Sharing food. It shouldn't be about one billionaire giving $44 billion to buy something called Twitter. When you can share some things, the gospel that I read this morning from John, they've been fishing. They've caught a lot of fish. Jesus is getting breakfast ready. How about that? There's a little conversation there. I always thought it was interesting. The gospel passage, whatever translation you might read, remember how many fish they caught? 153. I always thought that was incredible. Somebody thought it was important to make sure that was in the gospel. It didn't say they caught a large amount of fish. It says they caught 153. Somebody counted all those fish. Well, if you had that good a day, I guess you might be happy to say, I'm going to count every one of them and tell you. And they're sharing the fish. They're sharing what they have to feed one another because he says to them several times, feed my lambs, tend my sheep. And Peter gets hurt yet again, and he says, what should I do? The last part of verse 17, feed my sheep. But you can hear Peter and others saying, yes, but what about that? And Jesus says, feed my sheep. What about these issues? No, just feed my sheep, Peter. That's what he's trying to bring home to them and to us. That's the kind of good news that we need to make sure people know that Taos Presbyterian is about. That churches who believe in a radical Christ and one who's trying to feed the sheep, who's trying to bring new hope, new beginnings. You know, if somebody's had some difficulties and bad times in their life, when they come in that door on Sunday, you don't need to remind them of those bad times. You don't need to say, boy, I haven't seen you in a long time. They don't. They know that. It takes a lot of gumption to walk in, you know. Say, hey, welcome, glad you're here. Need to find ways to embrace and welcome folks in that way. And that must be one of the reasons people love Jesus as they do. We want the children to feel welcome. And they come down and sit here with some guy they don't really even know. Because it's a safe place, they feel secure. We need to make adults feel that way also. There's a lot of ways to feed people. The spirit, the soul, the mind, the body, the heart, the stomach. There's a lot of ways. So I ask you to think about those things, about those new kind of beginnings in this second Sunday after Easter. There's a lot of time coming. There's a lot of more flowers to bloom. And maybe if you have some flowers, you might surprise somebody today or this week who's consumed with their own illness or the smoke or difficulties. And sometimes they get a surprise phone call. You know, there's a place for emails. I don't think it says that in the Bible. There's a time and a season for emails, but there's a time for a phone call and a personal visit. And what about the handwritten letter? You know, there's lots of ways to surprise people in Mayday content. God help us all to find those ways and then act on them and let those ripples continue to go out far and wide.